Joining me live is our backbench panel today, Liberal MP Keith Wolahan and Labor MP Michelle Ananda-Rajah. Thanks so much for your time. I'll start with you, Michelle. How could I not, after caucus yesterday? What happened on AUKUS at a raucous caucus? You had some questions. Were they constituents' questions, your questions?
Yeah.
What's your view on AUKUS?
Sure. So I am supportive of AUKUS. I want to make that absolutely clear. And the question I asked was actually just in relationship to can we be confident that no other core programs will be compromised in relation to AUKUS? And those core programs refer to health and education and research. And these are valid questions that constituents and Australians all around the country want to know. And I was reassured that absolutely there would be no changes to any of our core programs.
By the PM,
absolutely, by the PM. I asked the Prime Minister directly. And as you know, we are investing in housing, we're investing in skills, in onshore manufacturing. And indeed, AUKUS is absolutely central to revitalising our industrial base in this country and pivoting this country from a primary industry-focused nation to a nation that is far more complex and diversified, and that is going to hold us in good stead going forwards.
All right. Well, that's Michelle's account of what happened in caucus, a question essentially. Do you have any concerns about that, Keith Wolahan, or probably more particularly and more interestingly, Josh Wilson's comments on it?
I think that's the difference. And to be fair to Michelle, it's often hard to respond to rumours about party room or caucus meetings, but I hope you're as frank as you were then with other caucus meetings. But the real question is the member for Fremantle. And also, the reports weren't just the member for Higgins, it was the member for Corangamite, so it would be interesting to see if there's a clarification on her position too. But the member for Fremantle gave an actual speech in Parliament about it, so that was a very deliberate act. And his concerns were specific. They were about nuclear waste and they were about the costs involved with building a submarine. Now that doesn't point to a unified team, and there's real questions and concerns about a project that is going to be over many decades. It's got to last through our democratic process, but also that of the United Kingdom.
It's only one MP, though, in fairness.
Well, it's only one MP that's spoken out loud. Usually when one speaks out loud, there's often more that are of the same view.
All right, well, let's move to The Voice. Anthony, speaking of caucus, Anthony Albanese reported to have warned about how difficult it is to get this proposal up in a referendum based on history. Do you fear defeat in the referendum?
No, I don't at all. I think that the Australian people are broadly supportive of this. Why? Because the Australian people believe in fairness and they care about people who are vulnerable and who are doing it tough. And it speaks to our values of care and consideration. And that is at the core of this proposal. Really, this proposal is all about ending this long history of paternalism and top-down policy making and actually giving our First Nations people empowerment and a seat at the table, much like this table, but in the big house, so that they can have agency over the affairs that determine their fate. And I think when you explain that to the Australian people, that this is really about recognition and consultation, they understand that. And it's really a very modest ask. As I've said before, it is radical in its modesty, The Voice. So I think that come referendum time, we will have broad support.
All right, Keith Wolahan, is it likely the opposition will oppose The Voice? Do you think there'll be a conscience vote? What's your own personal view of The Voice?
So my own personal view of The Voice, I've been against The Voice on principle, and I'm a backbencher, I get to say that. I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm also a migrant, and one of the reasons my family came to Australia was because of the cherished idea that every individual is treated equally and the same and has the same opportunity. I think there's a risk that this offends that principle, but that's a decision as a party for my party room and shadow cabinet, and that decision will come, and I respect that process that's about to come. In terms of the specific machinery bill that's being discussed this week, that's an important part of the process, because when we wake up the day after the referendum, whatever the result, whether it's yes or no, we must be confident that the people got it right, and they get it right when they're fully informed. That's why the proposals that we put forward of a pamphlet and an official yes and no case are key for the referendum, but they're also key for our democracy to be standing on good stead after the referendum.
All right, just finally and briefly, 2 elections coming up next couple of weeks, New South Wales election and Aston. What are your predictions?
With regards to New South Wales, I think there's going to be a change of government. I think
Aston?
Aston is going to be a tight race, and we're not taking it for granted. So the margin is 2.8%, but, you know, we have always maintained that it's going to be really tough for us to get up in what has been a Liberal stronghold for a really long period of time. But the winds of change are blowing just like they blew in Higgins.
Oh, what do you say to that?
Well, Andrew, I'm a Victorian, so we're a bit battered and bruised from last year. So I'm always loath to give predictions, but I think Dominic Perrottet and his team have run a good government and they deserve to be re-elected. It will be close, but I think they're in with a shot. It's not easy.
And in Aston?
In Aston, Rashina Campbell is a friend of mine. She's an outstanding candidate. We don't take that seat for granted, but I'm confident that Rashina Campbell will be the member for Aston.
Keith Wolahan, Michelle Ananda-Rajah, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. That's all for Afternoon Agenda. Now it's time for Business Now with Ross Greenwood.